Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Marvel and Disney pretty closely these last few months. And now we finally have it. Now the failure of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has officially destroyed the Marvel brand. This doesn't mean that Marvel is worthless. It doesn't mean they can't put out an exciting movie and maybe make some money. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy 3 will do well. Who knows? But it's probably not going to do $1 billion. Wakanda Forever couldn't do $1 billion. It's clear the Marvel brand is no longer growing, and it's clear that Ant-Man was a huge disappointment for Marvel. There are a lot of reasons why it was a big disappointment. It wasn't the special effects. It was the fact that no one really cares about the brand anymore because the people at Marvel don't care about the brand. It's a little unfair to say that it was Ant-Man's fault that destroyed the Marvel brand. The thing that really destroyed it was when they decided they had to put in identity politics and make that the feature, not even an aspect of, but the feature of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, that it was the first black superhero. They should have said, look, we are being inclusive, but made sure that the Marvel brand was more prominent than including a major black character. He was a very potent character. It made a lot of sense to make a single movie about him. That's fine. But it's very important that when you're selling the Marvel brand, the brand is not about identity politics. And they did the same thing with Captain Marvel. Oh, she's a female superhero, and she has to be the most powerful superhero ever, and she can do anything, and she don't need no man. Well, the problem is, even though that could be attractive in the moment, unlike Marvel, it's not going to sell for 80 years. It's not going to go on and be continuously successful, which is why Spider-Man continues to succeed, and the individual Marvel characters really don't, because they emphasize the wrong elements about what Marvel is all about. You don't get the same aesthetics from watching Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania that you would have gotten from watching anything from Marvel Phase 1 or Phase 2 or Phase 3. It's truly a failure of execution, but it's a failure to recognize the value of what they paid $4 billion for when they bought Marvel in the first place. It's incredible that the people at Disney wouldn't know this, but really, Bob Iger never quite knew what he was doing. He was slick on the business deals, but he never understood the creative aspect of what people were doing. He just complimented creative people, but he didn't understand the most basic thing, which is you have creative leadership, and that's fine. But the consumers and the fans, especially the really passionate fans, are the ones that make the most difference. That's your control mechanism. That's the thing that keeps the brand in check. Making sure that people who really love the brand are in sync with whatever it is that you're producing. They had warnings with Star Wars when they did all that stupid stuff with that Rey character. Nobody cares about that character. They couldn't even continue making Star Wars movies after Solo because they went way too far in trying to, quote, expand the market with all of their social justice ideology. Reinventing brands doesn't work. Brands represent certain aesthetics, certain stories, certain themes. That's what you paid the money for. That's all you have to work with. So now that they've decided, no, we're going to redefine what it means to be a superhero, and it's gotten so ridiculous to the point of what they're doing with the Marvels, trying to promote the Marvels. They've had to push it back twice now. The Marvels is not going to do as much business as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It has no chance of doing that. They're going to have to live with whatever numbers they get out of that movie. And now it's gotten so bad that Bob Iger has said, well, maybe we can't really make sequels for all of our Marvel characters. Like, well, of course you can't make sequels for the Marvel characters, and the sequels that follow don't even follow up on the characters that were successful in the prior movie. For example, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania doesn't really tell you a lot more about Ant-Man. You have a lot of adventures with people around Ant-Man, a couple of different Ant-Men. You've got 2 different Wasps in it. You've got Kang in it. It's really not Ant-Man's movie. And that's where that fails. And of course, in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever wasn't a sequel to Black Panther. It was just the world of Wakanda, so now you don't even have a follow-up to Black Panther. He's not really in the movie. This is obviously inexcusable for a sequel, because a sequel is all about having more of what you liked the first time. Not, hey, let's jam a whole bunch of other crazy stuff in there for whatever our ideological purposes are, or to prove that women can do this and minorities can do that, and you don't really have to focus on the character. You can focus on people related to the character. Like, no, you can't. That's what a sequel is about. It's more of the same. It's always been that way, and Disney can't reinvent that, whether it's the Star Wars brand or the Marvel brand. Let's get into this article. It's a thorough review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania's financial results. Let's put the nail in the coffin. Before we do, please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. Okay, from bounding into comics, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, pretty much a guaranteed flop, says Box Office Analyst. Box Office Analyst OMB Reviews recently declared Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a pretty much guaranteed flop following the film's fourth weekend at the box office. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania saw its box office grosses decline 45% in its fourth week, only bringing in an estimated $7 million at the domestic box office, according to the numbers. The film's total domestic box office gross currently stands at $197 million. It also brought in $249 million internationally for a global gross of $447 million. Discussing these most recent weekend numbers, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania continues to lose money every single day. It just continued to drop off every single day. 45% drop in its fourth week of release. OMB Reviews then noted this film has already gotten a jump start on losing to the previous Ant-Man films, especially when you adjust those numbers properly. You start to recognize that the film's edge that it got because it was a, quote, franchise opening record is very quickly diminishing. To that end, even if you don't factor in inflation, which you really have to compare apples to apples, we all know the price of everything has gone up. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania had a fourth weekend domestic haul. To that end, even if you don't factor in inflation, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Ant-Man had larger fourth weekend domestic hauls than Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Ant-Man and the Wasp brought in $8.7 million in its fourth weekend, while Ant-Man brought in $7.9 million. Factoring in inflation, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is still edging out the box office grosses for the first Ant-Man. As seen in the chart above, the film grossed $147 million domestically through its fourth weekend. That would be $186 million in 2023 dollars. However, given that Ant-Man has already begun beating out Quantumania in its fourth weekend, it might be tough for the new film to overtake Ant-Man's total domestic gross. Quantumania needs to gross more than $227 million domestically in order to surpass Ant-Man's inflation-adjusted numbers. Ant-Man and the Wasp is already beating out Quantumania when looking at inflation-adjusted numbers. Through 4 weekends, $183.4 million is $218.6 million in 2023 dollars. It's unlikely Quantumania will surpass the film's domestic total of $259.8 million inflation-adjusted gross. Not only does the film look like it will pace behind both its predecessors, but OMB Reviews believes that the film will lose money on its own. He says, quote, the fact that the film most likely won't even break $500 million, and if it does, it will barely break it, which means this film is looking to be pretty much a guaranteed flop at this point in time, whether using the $500 million mark as a metric for its break-even or a $600 million mark for its break-even. Again, whatever metric it is that you're using, I think it's no matter where you are on that, you will agree not looking good for Ant-Man. The film is looking like a flop. And when you are spending an extra $70 million on a film and all that you're getting out of it is losing money, and you're making the least amount of the entire franchise, does not bode well. Not just for Ant-Man, but also for the future of the MCU, he concluded. Later in his analysis, OMB Reviews says, the fact this is an MCU film trying to set up the next major villain in the MCU franchise, the fact that it's also in response to the opening of this film, they've decided to push back the Marvels. There are a lot of things going on right now that indicate this film being a massive disappointment and, of course, being a financial flop as well. The film actually dropped below $1 million for the first time in its third week of release. 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks behind where Ant-Man and the Wasp were. That's the reason why he's thinking $500 million is not likely going to happen for this film. It really does look like this is the first Marvel film officially in their series that is going to be an obvious financial money loser. They can say all kinds of things like, listen, we're happy we were able to introduce Kang, and the Kang performance was fine. He was okay, and they're going to do a lot more with Jonathan Majors as Kang. There's no doubt about it. But this just shows you this is the end of Marvel being a bankable franchise where you know you could take the money to the bank and it's successful. And if that's not bad enough, look at what Screen Rant is saying about Star Wars. New Star Wars movie cancellations are actually good for the future. Feige's unnamed film and Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, that's Patty Jenkins, cancellations indicate that Lucasfilm has found its direction going forward with Star Wars films. No, the cancellation of these two projects just means, they're so out there that there's no real viability and there's no way that they're going to budget the money to further develop these films. When they put films into development, they start spending money. They don't just sit around talking about the films like, oh, we're developing a film. It doesn't work like that. They start to spend money. They put resources into it. They put people on it, and they start working on it. They can't be doing that. It doesn't mean that the Star Wars films are resolved and you can expect good things, as Screen Rant is saying. It really means they just don't know what they're going to do, but they know that they can't really do these two projects. They're just too ridiculous. Kevin Feige, when he decided to go woke with Marvel, because he thought that Marvel could just absorb the tax and the burden of pushing out ideological junk on top of the franchise, it's where he made the mistake. Unfortunately, Feige refused to listen to Ike Perlmutter, who did understand the Marvel brands and who was able to say, hey, listen, you can't just do ideological movies. They have to make sense. They have to be good. They have to be what the fans want. How did Ike know this? He knew this because he had Toy Biz. They sold toys, and they knew what toys people liked. And it's the toys that people like and love and buy that represent characters that fans are really interested in. And if you don't have toys that are big sellers, you should not have films based on those characters. And that's the bottom line. It's about figuring out what the fans want and delivering it. But Feige didn't think so. And neither did Bob Iger. And of course, they got Ike out of control of Marvel so that Feige could do whatever he wanted to ruin Marvel. And so he did. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think this is the last shoe to drop, like the obvious thing that decides now Marvel is no longer a bankable franchise for Disney? They cannot expect to make serious money every time they make a movie. Even Bob Iger admits now they can't just make unlimited sequels. They can't do that because they have no idea if they're going to make any money or not. Although I think he kind of understands now they're really not. People don't care about these characters anymore. But let me know what you think of that in the comments below. And let me know if you also agree. Really, this Ant-Man movie was as bad as it was. It's probably going to be doing a lot better than whatever the Marvels is doing. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for leaving comments. Please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. And I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.